say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about fire. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family amongst lords of consciousness. I am the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void. We're live, and I know I usually do the music shows live on Monday nights, only on the station, but I wanted to do this while this was fresh. So just to give you guys a complete rundown of what's happening here. I finished the Dive Manual audiobook, so we're trying to get it updated into ACX and Audible and all that, which takes a little bit of time. But during the process of, let's just say, making this book, during the process of the reading of the book, I had certain experiences that happened. And I talk about these experiences with Anthony coming up shortly that were pretty profound for me. They're very vulnerable and very personal, but I don't think any type of healing is going to take place in the world without these things. So part of Lighting the Void and part of what we do is exploring consciousness is exploring the depth of our psychology. So it can be a little dark, but tomorrow night we'll have the normal shows, and like I said, I usually do the music shows on Mondays, but since I just finished this thing is like fresh in my head. It's totally fresh in my head, and I'm trying to keep the inertia going. So we're trying some new things here. I hope you enjoyed some of the comedy relief that we have from all the callers that call in to the radio station and to the shows. Instead of, hopefully they'll keep calling in. Some of them I don't want them to keep calling in, but some of them I do. So anyways, I don't want to just blab on because we got to do this interview, but some things happened while I was narrating this book, and it was kind of like going crazy in my head a little bit, doing this audiobook, narrating it and producing it but some synchronicities happened to me, which I didn't fully get to talk about, but I will talk to you about. And so there's some kind of archetypal things that happen, such as like the mermaid and the siren and the great mother and the divine feminine. And this book, which he wrote when he was young, like 20 years old, was pretty profound. And I haven't had any kind of crazy synchronicities happen to me in a long time. So as I started narrating this book, one synchronicity after another, compounded with dreams, compounded with a pretty crazy magical experience, and all kinds of things started happening. And all this was simply from diving into this book. All right. And this is one of our own, right? He's a host on The Fringe. He does his own podcast. You guys have heard him before. But I'm going to reveal kind of what happened to me in this, I guess, in this process of what happened to me while I was going through this book. And I hope you like it. And I'll be here with you the whole way. And afterwards, if there's time left, we'll do the recap. All right. So here we go. Pretty personal. By the way, like, I give a lot of compliments to Anthony. What's up, Joyce? I'll say hi. I didn't even say hi to everybody. What's up, Joyce, Georgiana, BC, Karma, and Michael. Hope you're enjoying your time out there, brother. Hope you're having a great birthday time. And anyways, Anthony, Ava, what's up, Ava? I started complimenting Anthony, and you could tell he doesn't really like take compliments very well, which is pretty noble of him. But you got to give credit to where credit's due. Anytime something or someone helps you with anything in your life, you got to say thank you. So there was some experiences that happened. So without further ado, I'll get right into it. What's up, Dylan, Delina? I'll get right into it and save you the pain of me just blabbing on and on and on. All right, so here we go. Let me see if I can get this done right here, because I'm kind of doing live and a little bit of a mix.
This book, Dive Manual, Empirical Investigations of Mysticism. Joe was kind enough to help me basically get an audiobook version of Dive Manual. And that's something we've been talking about for a while. We're finally getting that off the ground. That should be out soon. It will be out soon. Like 99% of the people listening to this can go check it out. You will be able to find a link. If you're listening to it fresh off the press, there might be just like another week or so potentially. But this book has been out since 2020. It's made its rounds, you know. It's certainly not, it's an independent, you know, I just published it on Amazon. It's not a New York Times bestseller by any stretch of the imagination, but it's made its rounds. You know, I took it on a lot of different shows, like names people might be familiar with, like Where Did the Road Go and Aeon Byte, Gnostic Radio. That's how I met Joe on Lighting the Void. And, you know, a lot of other people, and eventually started doing my show, Black Hoodie Alchemy, after I wrote my second book, Hunt Manual. I got a third one cooking in my brain. Very TBD on that one, but there will be a third one at some point, sooner rather than later. But so Dive Manual deals with mostly, you know, just to start, there's a lot to unpack here, but it's a lot of the divine feminine from an alchemical hermetic point of view. Hunt Manual has a lot to do with the shadow complex. There's a lot more horror angle, like true crime, paranormal type stuff. It's research based with a little bit of like fictional subtext. We can explain that a little bit. You know, I don't, Joe, we're kind of doing like a swap cast type deal here, because I'm sure the like the host listener, like there's no real or like host guest, like it's just both of us kind of talking at this point. Since I wrote the book, I'm sure I'll be answering some questions, but Joe has read, he has been living in the book for the last week or so, so he's got a lot to say about it.
Literally living in it.
Yeah. And so the last thing I want to say, just like as an introduction, is, I'm not just having this conversation with Joe so he can tell me like, oh, this is a great book, like the whole time. We're gonna get into the meat of it. I while I don't care, it's nice to hear compliments, but I don't fish for compliments. I do fish for the opportunity to talk about the book. Absolutely. So thank you very much, Joe. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you helped me get the audiobook off the ground, and I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, me too, man, because I think this was like, so I personally was going through something that I needed answers for. Basically like something, it's hard to explain. It's like something that, I don't know how to explain this because it's very personal to me. Something that I've been struggling with my whole life. Now, we talked about shadow work like so much on this show. And it gets to the point where, people are like, yeah, shadow work. God, can we talk about something else? But it's important, because if I'm talking about something on my show, it's because I'm going through it or thinking about it most of the time, right? It's not just like I have an interest in a subject matter and I think the audience is going to like it, so I'm going to talk about that. Like most of the time I'm literally going through it. So in this case, all the shadow work that I've ever done in my life has just been basically meditation, kind of introspection before I lay down at night, and ceremonial magic, other than reading books and stuff. And I've learned that alchemy happens through this process between the masculine and feminine, but wasn't quite in depth as to the process, how to introduce it into certain things. So this book, I'm reading this book. How old were you again when you wrote it? You were like 20 or something?
Yeah, that's good context for people in general. So it's kind of a long-winded answer. The short answer is I was like 20 to 20, 19 to 21. But the experiences in this book went from, I talk about like a little bit of my whole life, but specifically like 17, 18, basically. So, and I started the inklings of writing it then, but it didn't even really know where it was all going. It wasn't even like a book thing, really. And it took me, by the time I realized, just like chunks of writing, and I was like, all right, this is a manuscript. I had done some writing for the website, The Last American Vagabond. So I cut my teeth a little bit, and I had some esoteric stuff, and I had my own writings, and I was like, all right, I got some meat to work with here. And then I started really writing the manuscript from what I had. So yeah, it took like a good, plus editing. It was like 20 to 23 if you're counting all the editing and everything. And then I'm 28 now. I released it in 2020, like right as COVID hit.
Right. Okay. So it's kind of what I'm meaning to say is it's kind of a shock when you're 40 and someone's writing a book about stuff they're going through when they're 20. It's not a shock, but it's an eye opener to a point to where it's like, well, how much work have you really done on the stuff that's been hurting you or bothering you or whatever? And so it confirms so much for me. I don't even know where to begin. So it starts the book. I don't want to give away the book, but the premise of the book is like,
right, just talk about what you want. Yeah,
have
no
you
worries. I mean,
have you ever questioned your sanity, basically, right? Like, have you ever questioned your mind? Right. And there's this place you go to when your mind starts questioning lots of things and you're suffering at the same time. So especially when you don't know why you're suffering or things don't make sense to you, and then your mind can seem to spin out of control. And I've always thought that everything spawns from the masculine and feminine energies. It's deep in psychology. I've learned about the anima and the animus, right? Like, I technically know what it is. Israel Regardie talked about it and things like that. But have I really I've even done ceremony. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've even done ceremony, right? Like I forgive my mom for not being there, all this other stuff, burnt paper, whatever. I've done those things. Yet, like, I still found myself going after certain things that were pretty reckless for my well-being as far as my heart is concerned. Now, this doesn't have any, that's not your story, but it's how I related to this story, you know. And I don't want to say it's not your story, but it was for me, because I didn't know, like, the unconscious is so fucking powerful that we don't truly know how powerful it is. And this book goes through a lot of that. So it steps you down into understanding. I wish, like, when I'm trying to explain to people like symbolism, archetypes, magic, metaphysics, and explain it to them so that their mind can understand it on a deep level, even intellectual level, even if you're an atheist, especially if you're an agnostic, but even if you're an atheist, right? Like, if I could explain it to those people and then do the shadow work, and then, like, this is not that, like, I don't know how to explain it. Dude, I cried like 3 times writing it. I cried while I was talking about this book or narrating it. I laughed. I almost went crazy. I didn't sleep for 2 days because I had synchronicities that were happening to me too, that went right along with the book. Dreams. I'm not saying this is going to happen to you when you read it, but it happened to me. Dreams, a ceremony that I did the day before that you did something kind of similar in the book, you know, and then
right.
It puts this whole like dive spin on it. Like you're a diver that's going out to sea, that's going to the depths of the ocean to find out where the problem is. And the symbolism, this is all coming from the mind of a 20-year-old kid. Okay. To me. Right. So the depths of the symbolism that's involved with the steps to do the work is perfect. Right. And even the characters and like how you kind of talk about how these things work, right? When we talk about negativity, negative things, or unconscious patterns that are holding you down, like I'm talking about the darkest stuff about people that they lost from the time they were a baby all the way till now, you know? And these are the things that if we heal, we could truly have what Manly P calls a happy life if we've done the labor to heal them. And it is labor. Mm-hmm. But it's better. How do I say this? Like, it's better to be aware of it happening and the most intricate processes than go through it and have it smack you around and then wonder what the fuck just happened, you know? Like, and
life will do that.
You have to, and then, so what Anthony essentially did here was he like went through this thing when he was younger than he is now. And instead of just going, what the fuck happened? And then go out and do it again, like I usually do. He stepped it out because he, dude, you suffered through that. When I used to think no one's ever going to understand how much pain I go through when I go through things like this. Like some of the stuff that you've talked about in this book, I could literally tell people I would rather have my arm broke than feel some of these things that I went through this book, or that I went through, or that you wrote about in this book. But and they're entirely necessary to go through. And you give answers. It's not just like, I bring people on the podcast all the time. They're like, well, you just should do the work. You know, do the work. People need to do their work. And who the fuck is even talking about, how do we do this work?
Right.
You know, you understand what I'm saying? Like, what do you mean? Do you mean I need to go do magic? Do you mean I need to take psychology? Like, what do you mean? And I could definitely say, like, in your book, there's a process that steps it all out, but in a very fear and loathing Las Vegas kind of way, you know?
Well, I appreciate your kind words. And I really want to hear more about your personal experience reading it, because there's a lot to unpack there, synchronicities and things. And however much you want to go into about your story, I'm happy to go into about mine, like personally speaking, because I know, there's some relatability. But the book itself, Empirical Investigations of Mysticism, it's pretty accurate representation. It's a little bit of a coming of age tale, basically, as a backdrop. That's not the the driving force of the book. The driving force is research based. It's got a whole ass bibliography in the back. But me personally, I always felt in reading all the esoteric literature, because one thing I had, um, that I'm just thankful for, like, a gift from the gods out of all the bullshit that I've been dealt, just like everybody. I had a knack for philosophy and weird stuff, like, the coast to coast type shit early on. So um I had a lot of that kind of stuff floating around in my head, and at an early age. But and then when shit really hit the fan and I felt like I was not on a solid path, I had enough wherewithal to know that I wasn't on a good path. And I also, I had like heard whispers, if you will, of like ancient truths
Right.
and better methods of living. And at that point in my life, you just like, your average person, it just kind of sounds like some Indiana Jones kind of shit. And but like but those are real whispers, like real people talk about it. So I'm like, man, if there's anything left that could get me on the right track, it's got to be something like that. And I always had a real strong punk rock ethic. I never wanted a leader. I always wanted to find something on my own. And that's what the book is about. It's breaking down Jungian psychology. I'm a avid follower of Jung, but not to like, that is the ultimate jumping off point for me, but that's not the end all be all. But I think understanding psychology, the existential psychology, not the bare bones stuff, but understanding a psychological framework that really lends to, at least has an open mind to, like, higher possibilities. I think that is the perfect step, because you need control methods, you need blueprints, and the psyche is the fertile soil for which whatever metaphysics spring from. All these gods and angels and demons that we can encounter in our dreams or on a psychedelic trip or something, they are of the mind, but not completely. We can get into it more, but the way I see it is it's all layers of the onion. Like, if you have a strong enough interaction with these archetypes of your mind, then it kind of can be like a proverbial bottle for a genie, and you might actually get some genuine interaction from shit we don't understand. Some things that I go into in this book, right on the heels of shit that we don't understand and interactions, is the Siren and the metaphysics of that.
Yeah.
So we can unpack that more too. But and then there's the whole thing where it's kind of like a Socratic situation where I'm just kind of having fun with it, and I am directly talking to the reader, and we're going on the dive. We're getting the equipment ready and going out and setting sail and the whole 9 yards. So that's the gist of what you're getting into. And it's gonna break down all the wild, esoteric, occult stuff from as much of a grounded position as I could find in any of it. Astrology, tarot. I try to have practical answers for everything that aren't end all be all answers. Practical food for thought that you can actually walk away with no qualms about it, because it's scientific data, it's historical literature, it's historical documents, and it's just basic observations taken from them. Like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, so you just got to read through a lot of this stuff. Like, there's forgotten wisdom all over the place. But I digress. Where would you like to go with that, Joe?
So listening to Black Hoodie Alchemy got me in, really thinking about this too, because I knew you had a book, and I was like, I read the book, but I read through it kind of fast, and it was a long time since I had it the first time, and I was so scatterbrained, and I thought, I'm trying to find, like, times are hard financially, so my whole motives behind this was I'm trying to find work to get into. So to break into the audiobook field, like, I need to do some audiobooks, okay? But I'm not going to be able to be good at them unless I'm interested in them. So this is when I approached you, and I was like, man, I need to do this audiobook and really get into it, because I couldn't think of any other book I'd want to start with. I've done audiobooks for other people, but I just wasn't into it, not the way this one. And so, like, it was cool because, yeah, you do have this kind of thing where, yeah, I'm going to have to talk about some deep stuff, so I'm lighting up here.
I'll light up with you.
Like this thing where you're beside the person that's reading it the whole time, right? So I just personally went through something that was pretty tough. And when I say tough, I don't want to, like you, when you say in the book, if I could do this book and not involve these other people, I would, but there's no way to talk about it. Well, in my sense, like, I have people that I've went through this with, and I can't say their names, but, like, there's a place that you can feel extremely alone and extremely isolated and extremely ostracized without ever physically truly being alone, isolated, and ostracized from society and everything else. And that place is right inside your mind and inside your heart too. And in turn, when you go through this stuff, like, you will kind of end up, like, if you're not healed from something, it's really true. Like, as within, so without. So you will be alone, Mm-hmm. And
that's the scary thing about the process is once you're in it, you have to see it through to the other side, because if you don't, you're going to end up broken and alone, basically. Yeah,
this is not neurotic or narcissistic. It may seem that way, but we're talking about stuff like, if you're going to do some deep healing on yourself, and you're going to do it,
it's definitely neurotic.
It's definitely neurotic.
See it as narcissistic.
Because, like, I don't want to say that you can't just focus on yourself, but you kind of have to. You kind of have to get pushed into this point where you are just focused on yourself, but so that you can be better for the people you care about,
Yeah. And here's the thing. It's not yourself all day 24/7, but you make ceremony and ritual out of that exploration and, cultivation of those aspects of yourself that, people talk about, like, the inner wounded child, and that's a great thing to consider in the situation. But I mean, just generally speaking, from a broader point of view, there are so many aspects of, our personality, our existence, that are, we have needs from that personality that are not met in our everyday lives. Like, that's just common sense. And how you go about facilitating those needs, meeting those needs, is a whole other ballgame. And in a lot of cases, the more existential you get, the more you find that those needs cannot be met by your everyday life. So where do you go from there?
Yeah. So the Tool, and you quote this in the book, Tool has the song, Mom's gonna wash it all away soon, right? Like, that whole visit, that whole thing, anima, right? It's like, dude, I knew what that meant deep down, but, like, when I read the book, I was like, damn, I wonder, like, I knew what the anima, he was talking about that, but I really thought he was talking about destroying the whole world because he was pissed off. And in a sense, he was, but
yeah, that was the metaphor on the face of it. It was literally the idea of California, an earthquake hitting the fault line, and just LA and California drifting off into the ocean because he hates LA.
Yeah. And, like,
the fun song. But there's a lot more to it, the whole anima and the purging aspect. Yeah, big time.
I'll just say it like this, all of my friends are very empathetic and caring and aware of people for a reason. Like I've got really close friends. Anthony's one of them. I'd say Ryan's another one. You know, very empathetic and caring and aware people. And for this reason alone is because I think the great mother that you speak about in the book is understood. The need for it is understood, but the process to accessing it's kind of like you attract what you are. So if you really are authentic, you're going to attract the friends and people and relationships and stuff into your life that is kind of like you. I believe that, you know. I mean, you will repel what you don't like. You'll have to face that too. But so to give you an example, I've been like, I believe in my path is like relationships. And I started thinking, well, this is just my path. Well, no, it's not my path. Relationships are a way of life, and everything in nature has masculine and feminine energy. We preach about it all the time. But how do we get to the core of this, right? And like, how do we find the wounds that are there? And then how do we heal those wounds? And you don't know when you're, in a sense, relationships are meant to, at the very least, show you these wounds, at the very least, and at some point heal them. And this is what I'm starting to realize, that just the relationship side of this, okay, there's a whole other energetic, archetypal, natural, universal side to this thing, but just the relationship side of it will reveal the wounds. And if two people keep growing and healing these wounds and go through it, they can. But that also depends on all kinds of other circumstances. So when you're wounded, when you're hurt, when you're in pain, you kind of lose touch with reality in a sense sometimes, because you begin to focus on the pain, and it does become neurotic, right?
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. I don't want to derail you, but just to feed into that, when something is so bad and you're in so much pain, your only option, it's a survival instinct at that point, is to go inward and try and figure out what the fuck is going on, because otherwise you're just going to have like a psychological bleeding open wound, and that's not good for longevity or survival. So it really only makes sense.
And it's not good for the people in your life either. Like,
right.
You know, so one thing that happened is I had some of the same kind of like dreams. And this wasn't after I read the book. This was like, I'd have a dream about something and then wake up and fucking read about it. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know, like, what is going on here? And this is when, you know, you're tapped in, you know, because Carl Jung talks about synchronicity, about how it's not like just some random coincidence, you know, which is why I think when he was asked, do you believe in God? He was like, no, I know God's real, you know? And then I realized I've got a deeper great mother wound than I was willing. I make jokes about it and I talk about it nonchalantly. Like, you know, I've never had a true mother or never felt that kind of motherly love in my entire life, and blah, blah, blah. And I make jokes about it because I don't want to be a burden to anybody. But I'm burdening myself, which is in turn burdening other people. You see what I mean? Like, this book kind of showed me that, like, I have to heal this thing. So another night I did a ritual, and I'm talking about big time visualizations happened in this ritual. I was just calling it the divine feminine at the time. And then the next day I read a chapter, and here Anthony is diving down in the water in the book, right? Meeting his great mother, which is a different figure altogether, and it didn't happen the way mine happened, but it happened in the way that was meant to happen for him, you know? And dude, when I was reading that, my eyes started sobbing, bro. Like, I had to stop it and go back and walk outside and like smoke and walk back and forth and figure out, get my shit together, come back in and then reread it again, you know? So it was some pretty heavy stuff for me, man.
Well, I feel you, because that was a hard chapter to write as well. Yeah, I could say that for sure. There was several hard, I don't know about several, because I think several might mean like 7 or more. That would be like over half of the book. Some of it was thoroughly enjoyable, for sure. It was just cathartic, and I felt like Indiana Jones on the trail in my mind. And some of it was absolutely brutal. It felt good to write, and it felt good to get done. But it was um, in, in divine humility, I think, is a good phrase for it.
Yeah.
In I like to use the metaphor, if people are familiar with my recordings and the shit that I do, they've probably heard me say this before. Just the whole Faustian motif at the end of the play, where, after all his excess, his metaphysical excess, the spoils of that Mephistopheles gave him, he he realizes the error of his ways, in a not in a trivial way, but in a genuine way, so genuine that it gives him a heart attack and kills him. But that realization of the error of his ways that killed him was also the thing that saved his soul. And you know basically granted him access to heaven as opposed to hell. So that sense of divine humility, of just the the absolute sorrow and misery, but the weight lifted as well, because of the, maybe to use another metaphor, in that Buddhist mindset of, getting to the true root of the problem, instead of just trying to chop it off and be symptomatic. Once you uproot something, you really take away its power, instead of just making it some sort of daily chore. So that divine humility is very painful and uncomfortable, but it's just as much freeing and inspiring and insightful. And like, from the ashes you're born anew. It's a very literal metaphor. Ashes are
It's
great
kind of like
fertilizer.
that death card energy, that Scorpio energy, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
another thing too that I would love to write about is my alchemical journey. Like, Anthony's inspired me to write, actually, and I'm like, dude, will you do my audiobook? And he's like, yeah, maybe, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, that would be cool.
No, I definitely will. Yeah, hell yeah.
Because like this divine mother is not a joke. It's not a joke. It's not a it's a very real thing. So here's the thing, like, can you fall in love with something unseen? That's the real question. Can you fall in love and have faith in and live by something that's unseen? Now, this doesn't really work this is the trick of this whole thing. This doesn't really work for the feminine in the physical sense. But in the metaphysical sense, it's entirely necessary. Entirely necessary.
Let me help you unpack some of this here, because for anyone that hasn't read this, I think you get the gist of what we're stepping into, with the considerations of Jung and psychology and occultism, esoterica. We've talked about alchemy. The linchpin that I think might help people understand a little more is the concept of active imagination in ceremony and ritual. This is the fertile soil of the shamanic journey, and Western magic as we know it. Like, it really is getting yourself into a scientifically effective and verifiable trance state or hypnotic state or meditative state. And once you get to that place, it's not a subjective thing. It's very documented and verifiable. You get to a place where you can just let your mind, it's just the nature of the trance state. You just let your mind play out. Right. So what you do, the part of the ceremony and ritual, is you get whatever you think is required. I'm pretty chaos magical in that sense, even though I have a lot of tradition. You get your sigils and your candles, whatever is part of your setup, and that's the priming. You get your mind. It's like it's Inception. They're talking about the kicks of the music to get them out of the layers of the dream. This is the opposite of that. Is all these things are kicks going inner, further inward. And then if you go deep enough, you might make a deep enough vessel for some real genuine stuff to come through. But because like not every dream, from a practical standpoint, all dreams are interesting and poignant, but not every dream is some sort of divine intervention, but they have the potential to be, and some are truly defy explanation with the things that come from them. But
most of them do come from like the literal unconscious, but divine messages or deep messages are usually, they're kind of in between all that.
Yeah, layers of the onion. And so what I was doing was exactly that. I was, using these like reverse kicks in Inception type metaphor to go deeper into my psyche so that I could find this active imagination and let it run so that it could teach me. Because you can even utilize this as a full-blown atheist. I think it's going to lose some of its veneer, it's going to lose some of its zest, but the point is, from a purely materialist point of view, we can just go back to what I was saying before about how there are simply, very demonstrably, things about all of our existence, needs that we have, existential needs that are not met by our daily lives, and in a lot of cases cannot be met by our daily lives.
Oh, dude, that's so true. That is so true.
Where do you go from there? Are you just going to be a dummy, with your head in the sand, like, I hope I figure this out? Or are you going to try and get your hands dirty in the lab, get to the workbench of your mind and try and figure some shit out? And what do? Even as a materialist at that point, you would try and let your mind wander so that you could dig into it and explore it more. Really makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and it does it in like a step-by-step process. So you go through the book first and you explain this stuff kind of like psychologically and scientifically, right? You explain how this stuff kind of works. For anybody that is a skeptic about any of it, I've never seen a better explanation of how all this stuff works. And I've read books. I mean, I've read all kinds of books, right? Like modern authors, from some of the greatest magicians and stuff like Gordon White and all these people, all the way down to, Eliphas Levi and further, Agrippa. But for somebody to explain it to a modern day person and say, look, this is how you can do the work. Let me first explain some of these processes that are going on. And I'm right here beside you, right? Actually, I'm right here beside myself, but I'm here with you too, So it's really cool to have someone in that book kind of speak to you, like the author, like you speaking to somebody. Like, even if it's even if it's here and there, it's like, no, I'm here with you. Like, I get what you're going through,
Yeah, I thought it would be fitting for I don't know, the feel of the book, like all that fourth wall kind of breaking, like the book in and of itself. I think that's another, since we're fucking talking about the book, like, I can honestly say that this book in and of itself, without being pretentious or too high-minded here, from a psychotherapeutic Jungian point of view, this book was magic. This was ceremony and ritual that I conducted to try and exercise some shit from my brain. And if nothing else, if no one ever read it, I succeeded. I've conducted the initial aspects, I guess, of like what you would call the sacred alchemical marriage. I've partook and am still, in the process of individuation.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't stop for sure. Yeah.
Right. That's like, see, I don't claim to be at any endpoint. The only thing I claim, which I feel comfortable claiming, is that I am no initiate. I am a strong working journeyman, but I'm no master. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure my shit out.
Yeah, I could say the same thing too, but like, um, there's certain levels too that I've realized that, you know, at the time you think, well, I have conquered my anima, right? You think you've conquered it because you have conquered something massive. You have healed something massive, but
All you've done is lay the groundwork. You
right,
haven't
like
conquered anything.
that's exactly what I was trying to say. There's nothing to conquer, because this is what I think this book, and I'm going to go way out on a stretch here, but this is what this book kind of starts getting you to realize, to understand, that I've intuitively known my entire life, that magic, this word that we call magic, means a lot of things, but at its very essence, it is a process that can help you psychologically, archetypally, and fundamentally, through practical working, understand the depths of what this thing is that we call love.
Yes.
We don't know what that is. We don't know. We don't know how deep it is. We don't know what it is, but we know it's there. Right. And we know it's divided into two forms. We figured this out. Okay. We got the great mother and the great father. We've got man, woman, masculine, feminine, positive, negative, all these different levels of understanding these energies. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So even contacting this energy at any set of these levels is going to like unlock certain things in you of understanding that it's still up to you to heal, right? Like, just so you can see it. And so what Anthony done, and he's like, long story short, man, just went straight down. And it's not easy. It's like, even when you're going down to try to, like, I'm going to get all the way down and find this anima, great mother, whatever. Like, I'm going to find the great mother to help me heal this anima. Things try to stop you. Now, I've seen this in all of psychology. Tom Zinser, who wrote the books, and he gets into hypnotic, because I'm a big, huge fan of hypnosis, like more than most people know, trance and hypnosis, right? Like, he even gets into the books where he went away from clinical psychology, and he still uses it, but he started using some of these other concepts that you talk about in these books, and there were actual entities in people that would raise up and stop him from going deeper into their unconscious, right? And like,
Gatekeepers.
it's fascinating, dude. Like, these texts, fascinating, because he talked about multiple personalities, dissociative disorders, and all these different levels where just like these metaphysical energies would literally come up and keep him from, blocking him from getting any further, you know. But in your book, a magician takes matters into his own hands, right? And in your book, you took matters into your own hands, which I think helps you to plunge deeper. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm plunging deep to the depths. I'm facing my demons. And not only that, I'm doing it with you. Right? I'm right here with you. Take my example and let me show you how this works for me, you know?
Yeah. There's different kinds of magic. But magic for me, especially in this book, and here's the thing, is to do other kinds of magic, you have to do this first, because it's that purgative, it's that purge quality. You have to cleanse yourself first. But again, magic for me ultimately is radical self-therapy with actual control methods, because otherwise you're just spiraling into an endless chasm of neurosis and delusion and fantasy. But if you have control methods that are actually quantifiable and verifiable and are backed up, that so you don't get lost in the sauce, you don't get lost out at sea, then you can find, you don't need a fucking guru. You can do this all on your own. Joe and I, we're still on the process just like anyone else, but we have seen radical results from the work that we've done in, you know, in our personal spiritual practices. So it's like, I don't even know if I'd be alive still if it wasn't for all this. You
Yeah,
know,
and it also like through the relationship side of it, it also shown me like it's so hard to even talk about, like to spit it out, because I would literally pace around here while I was reading the book. And I just went out on some dates too. And it's like, I could just, there was no connection. Like, especially one was not really dates, but just meetups. Right. And then just trying to search, here I am again, right. Trying to search and chase and find this thing that I need to fulfill me, you know, which is natural, but like, one night I remember coming back from the station, and I was like, good God, you know, like, why do I feel this way? Like, what? And I started thinking about every relationship I've had with the feminine, from my mother to my grandmother, to all of like my friends, to my first girlfriends. And each thing was different. And each thing that I treated it like it was a formula, like, okay, well, they don't like this, so I won't do that again. And then the next one was completely different. And it's like, well, shit. Like, it's just like you're being led on the whole time, you know? And this is how I think people can grow to hate the opposite energy of the sex that they're born in, because they're not really understanding what's going on, right? Like, all this stuff is supposed to happen. But at that night I was pacing back and forth, and then I opened the book, and it was, so it's like the fifth synchronistic thing that happened. This is how you know you're doing something too, when synchronicities start happening. Like, you started expressing in the book, like, why are you doing this to me? Like, why are you, you know, why are you leading me on? Why are you doing this to me? You started talking about like your how you felt, how ostracized and alone you felt. And it's not really your reality. You had friends around you. You could call your friends. You could, you know, probably talk to anybody. But that place inside of you is such a vast place, dude, that it feels alone, you know. And
and disassociation is a real thing. You know?
Yeah. And like, so I'll tell you guys what happened. I usually don't like to talk about it, but I think I have to. What I realized that I was going through is basically it does come down to like psychology, but you could say that all day long and you're still not going to be able to heal it, you know. Being aware of it and actually healing is two different things. So I did this prayer. I did my own prayer. I did my own ritual, and I lit a candle, and my temple is kind of old. My temple is very traditional, so it has the pillars. It's Golden Dawn style, right? So if I'm going to do anything around the Great Mother, it's going to be that left pillar, just to kind of let you know. And so I did my breathing exercises, my prayers. I got myself in a deep state of trance. And, you know, once the emotions started kicking in, I really asked the question. I'm like, why do I keep running into these walls? Like, every freaking person that I try to love is like, and just saying it is it sounds weak to me, but I had to say it. You know, it's like every person that I try to love, there's always something that I'm not doing, I'm not enough of, or too much of, or I didn't take this one seriously, or I played too much. And it's like a barrier after barrier after barrier, you know, like, why can't I just find, and I just broke down, like, why can't I just find someone to love me for me and not leave, you know? And then I hit my knees and I started bawling. Right. So there was not just feminine wounds, but there was like abandonment wounds and all kinds of things that came out. And dude, the craziest thing happened. Like, I felt a hand on my left shoulder, right? Like I could, It's like being touched. And I thought, and at that time, you know, I'm kind of like in a half kind of dream state. So I don't really, you know, I don't take it into like it's real. Like, it didn't jump scare me or something, you know, because I'm not totally conscious like I am now. You know, it takes me like 20, 30 minutes before I'm actually into the middle of the ritual, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't even look, but I kind of look to my side, and like my grandmother's there. Both of my grandmothers are there. And my mother was there. My mother that I didn't really have a relationship with, you know. Wow. And all of these things symbolized to me the Great Mother. Like, to me, it was something trying to show me the Great Mother. And they told me, they said, the problem isn't that it wasn't really a telling, man. It's not like, it's hard to explain. It's like I knew that the whole act of trying to chase or be good enough for something is the problem in itself, and that I always was from the beginning. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to run into life at the same time. And that to understand the deeper aspects of the feminine, I will never and may never experience it through another person ever, you know. And it was almost like at that moment I realized this relationship that I have with this thing that I can't see, touch, smell, see, and hear is what is here to teach me. Like, it's not necessarily, I don't know if it's like, this is what I was always looking for, and I'm just going to be alone the rest of my life. But I felt okay if that was the case for the first time honestly, for the first time in my life.
I know how you feel. Yeah.
Like, honestly, for the first time in my life, I'm like, I'll be okay regardless, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to be enough for anybody or good enough or for anybody, right? Like, sometimes it's not even about being enough, and that's what you think because you have these wounds, you know, and lots of things get projected, right? And in any relationship that you get into, once it gets deeper, if those wounds come out, the more masculine person, whether it's the man or the girl, is probably going to project the anima, and then, like, you know, the more feminine person is probably going to project the animus on you. And it's those times when you, like, true intimacy is like when those times when those things cross. So if you think about it, like, and I was seeing all these pictures, like the yin yang symbol and all that stuff. So it's like in those times, that little circle inside those things in the yin yang, right? So say, for instance, this side is the feminine that covers up this hole of the masculine, and this side is the masculine that covers up this hole in the feminine. True intimacy is taking down those walls in that big color field so that you can see that hole. And then inside that hole is where the deepest wounds and healing and intimacy happen, right? And then I was kind of shown that regardless if you ended up with a person or not, or if they accepted you or not, you being shown that dot and you showing that dot to somebody else is everything. It's everything, you know?
Absolutely, man. That dot, that entry point is so much of romance. I mentioned earlier in the conversation how, you know, I guess we could just speak from our vantage point as just straight dudes. Like, we've both felt this at least a little bit. We've seen other dudes really go down the rabbit hole with this, where they just become bitter and angry.
Yeah.
And they're just, even if they're, you know, they might not even outwardly have any problems with women. It's not like they're like shouting at them in public or beating them, but they just hate women. Like, if you really ask them about
because
it,
they don't, and it's dude, and you know as well as I do, bro, it's because they don't, they want to feel safe, right? Like any
and
guy,
they want to understand those aspects of themselves that women have shown them glimpses of, but they can't get their hands around. You know, this existential feminine quality, which is far more alchemical. You know, it's dealing with the union of opposites and the polarities. You know, these are cosmic forces of nature that sexuality plays a role in, but is not the the only force by any stretch
it's
of
not
the
even the most
imagination.
important in my point of view. You know, it's
Yeah,
necessary.
and Joe and I are pretty traditional people. That's how we were raised, and that's kind of, we're just straight dudes. But like, you don't have to fit even into a traditional framework. The fact of the matter is, like, the union of opposites and these forces of nature operate within all of us, and we all have imbalances and extremes in our psyches and in our lives, and these are the alchemy, the transmutation. Those are the metrics with which we gauge the extremes and how we remedy that.
Yeah, man.
But
Yeah.
but before I let you keep going, I wanted to give this to you. I know you've read this recently, so it's floating around in your brain. And for the listeners, a very brief quote from Jung that I have in my book, but it's from Memories, Dreams, Reflections. So on the heels of everything I just said and Joe talked about, the quote is, "I was greatly intrigued by the fact that a woman should interfere with me from within. At first, it was the negative aspect of the anima that most impressed me. I felt a little awed by her. It was like the feeling of an invisible presence in the room. Then a new idea came to me. In putting down all this material for analysis, I was in effect writing letters to the anima, that is, to a part of myself with a different viewpoint from my conscious one. I got remarks on an unusual and unexpected character. I was like a patient in analysis with a ghost and a woman."
Right. That's perfect.
Which I think, yeah. We have this like apex consciousness aspect of our consciousness, the tip of the iceberg, that's the ego, but there's so many different characters inside all of our regular healthy psyches. And I think the only difference between a schizophrenic or someone with multiple personality disorder is just the fact that their barriers have been eroded.
Yeah.
But we all have those psychodramas inside of our psyches.
Yeah, man. Like I tend to think, I used to think that facing your fear was, well, if you just face all of your fear, then you'll heal everything. And that's not really true. Like facing fear,
part of it.
Yeah, you only heal part of it. And a lot of times if you're like me and you're like, oh, fear, and you take it in the teeth, and then the thing that you were afraid of, even that you think you overcame, still happens, and you're like, well, what'd I do wrong? I faced my fear, I let go.
Dude, I've been there, man. I've been there, and it's a frustrating feeling. Like, well, what now?
Yeah,
what the hell?
I faced my fear. I did everything I was scared of. I was open. I was vulnerable. Or I did this thing that I was always afraid of. Like, where's the reward? I didn't get my reward, But here's the thing. Like, with relationships, when you become neurotic, you forget that you forget the idea of relationship in itself. Like, it ain't, there's a whole other person with another will and other things and other situations and other viewpoints and maps and models of the world and unconscious things going on. And you're expecting that thing to reward you, which is what you would do to a mother or a father. Look what I did. Look, I deserved this. Why didn't I get it? Why didn't I get recognized? How come I don't get what that person gets? You see what I'm saying? And, growing up with a mother that was pretty much unavailable, that chose another family, another man other than my dad, which kind of hurts a lot of, well, it helps some children, and other children it hurts, and then the excessive partying and just having a mother that chose the depths of addiction and pretty much any bad spiral a woman can go down over me caused me it caused me to chase things in my life unawarely that were not really available to begin with. Reckless situations that I should not, if I was being a mother to myself, or if I was to listen to the Divine Mother, I wouldn't have even put myself in that position, no matter how desirable they may seem, And the other ones where, just circumstance or timing or whatever. Like, it's not always as big as we think it is,
Yeah, there's it's definitely worth noting, especially for anyone listening that hasn't read, just all the precedent set in comparative religion for romance at large, genuine romance being the precipice for genuine divine intervention. This is the whole premise for Dante's Divine Comedy. This the whole basic concept behind things like tantric Buddhism, and there's concepts found in I couldn't remember any keywords for you, but I've listened to rabbis talk about this in Kabbalah, Judaic mysticism, where just the core motif that part of a genuine romance and part of why comparative religion usually always argues for monogamy is because of this larger esoteric principle that you are forging a relationship with someone that is basically ready, willing, and able to not only be just a regular person without all the high dressings and the over philosophizing, but also be that mirror for yourself so that you can see other aspects of yourself that you've never seen before, in order to work on yourself, and also to be able to get a glimpse of that which extends beyond both of you.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
And that's really well said, dude. And I've always had this deep desire, and I'm not alone in this desire, to have a life partner that I could do that with and grow with, regardless of, I'm a bit internally focused because I value more the internal than the external. I always have, but to have that partner there, to be warm every single night, fights happen, whatever, but to work through those things, to grow with somebody. And not only that, like, when you really get into Tantra and alchemy and that side of it, the energetic side of alchemy, like, even past the honeymoon phase and all this other stuff, if you want to explore the depths of passion and romance, like, to me, and I don't even think it's traditional. I think it's been labeled traditional, but to me, it's actually evolutionary to be able to explore that with a person for a long period of time. Like, there's depths to that too. You understand what I'm saying? That you're not going to get from several different partners or whatever. These energies touch your heart and soul. They touch everybody's heart and soul unless they're a walking NPC at one point in their life, Right, so it ain't just women, it's men. And like, I just think this whole masculine and feminine thing not only needs to be understood, but has been completely and utterly corrupted in a lot of cases, And if you're an externally focused person, you're in a world of shit because you can't really, to try to keep up with that's ever evolving and ever pressurizing you to be something that you're truly not anyways. And I can say that with a lot of confidence because I have one thing that I know that I've had countless dudes come to me and have practically cried in my lap because people just open up to me for some reason like that, And then when I witness how they actually are in the world with their partners, I'm like, why don't you just tell her that? Well, I can't tell her that, dude. Why? She'll leave me. And it's like, then I don't think, that you're like, to me, it's like, then I don't think you're the right person. If you can't open that circle up, like, how long have you been with this person?
Absolutely.
And these people are miserable. Right. And then it's like, well, it's really all about money. We're having external problems. Yes, you are having financial and money problems. Yeah, you are. But if you had a foundation, like, think the yin and yang foundation, if that was really balanced out, it wouldn't really matter. You could get through it. And secondly, like, you don't, every problem has a cause, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad business person. Like, how are you going to be able to do business when your insides are ripped inside out? You know, well, I have to cut this off and be a man and all this other stuff. It's like, being a man is, to me at this point, what I've learned is taking care of yourself. You don't cut that part off of yourself, because you do have to take care of business, and you don't allow yourself to be trampled with in that way. You don't,
exactly.
You just don't, because you do have things and people and other things to take care of. So this is in turn where, like, the esoteric and the Freemasons and a lot of people like Hall and others have told you and taught you that your desires are good and you can get what you desire. But if your desires have run amok, then it will cause you suffering, right? And so this is what I've learned. My desire has overcame, like, I've looked past the great mother, and it's like, well, I really desire this. I'm going after it. Well, that's probably not a good thing for you. It's not a good situation. It doesn't matter. I want it. Because little Joseph wants the mother to see how special he is, and he'll prove it. You see, when he shouldn't have to do that to begin with.
I don't. This certainly ties into everything you've been talking about. I think it is a little deserving of a segue that I don't have. But I think, other than just talking until we've said everything we need to say, the only other bullet point that I think I'd like to bring up, since I mentioned it earlier, is the idea of the siren in the book.
Oh yeah, yeah. I had some synchros with that too, but go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So piggybacking off of everything that we're talking about there, in terms of my inner work, you know, I'm in a happy long-term relationship now that I'm very thankful for, with a lovely lady. This book had a lot to do with, you know, the mechanisms of romance. It was my first genuine, you know, romance, and the things we talked about with the mirror, and I found a lot of comparisons with Dante and Beatrice, and the idea of catching a glimpse of something through this woman that was far greater than either of us, because of the genuine connection we had. And once that fizzles out, you're left with an inability to bridge the gap between what you were able to find of that greater transcendence, whatever it was, even if it was just an inkling. All of a sudden, that thing that was the greatest thing, that went beyond description, that you've never been able to attain before, it's all of a sudden gone. And good luck trying to rekindle that relationship, because that's not how 99% of them work. So all of a sudden, even if you are some, you know, just trust fund brat that is had the whole world given to them, all of a sudden you can't get this, you know. And not only can you not get the person, but whatever that intangible feeling was, yeah, good luck getting that. And so that was the whole thing for me after this ended. Well, firstly, another important thing is, I think it was just the alchemy of my experience, and I was going through a lot of I was young too, so a lot of coming of age, and I was looking into this stuff.
But
more than young
you had an
people
intense
do.
connection with somebody that you felt, for sure, you know.
And however it happened, I ended up having a dream about her that I describe in the book, because I wrote it in my journal months before I met her. And then we had a brief but important relationship, and we talked a lot of philosophy. It opened up a lot of doors for both of us, even just intellectually. But and then after that, I kept having dreams about her, and let me unpack that just a little bit, and this will explain the siren. This is where the siren comes in. The first dream, long story short, I was trying to follow her through a crowd at a carnival, and she was like motioning for me to follow, but I couldn't get through the crowd, and there's more involved, but there was always a chase involved. That was always the whole thing. She always wanted me to follow, but I could never get close enough, and there was always obstacles, and they were always different fantastical things. And um I I even like up to like a couple of years after the relationship, it would be months with no problems. And all of a sudden I'd have a dream where I'm chasing her again. And then maybe I'd have that dream every night for 4 nights, and then not again for another month. And then I'd have one, and then not again for a few months. And then maybe like a shitload in a couple weeks. And it was just so weird because I felt like physically I had completely moved on. Everyone that's like the first love, like you have a soft spot, and you still wish the person well, at least in most cases. And so I certainly had all of that. I still really cared about her, but
You guys
I
got
always
some
did
really awesome closure, I will say. That was really cool.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, she's a great person. Shout out to Ramona, not her real name, but she knows who she is. um but yeah, so um the dreams, I kept having them, and it would kept bringing me back into the turmoil. And all of a sudden I had a healthy distance, and then all of a sudden I'm right back, even if I didn't want to be. And I felt like I had a logical grasp on, like, man, you're past this. The dreams would just drag up. They would just remind me that, like, well, you still have some of this unresolved stuff here. And I couldn't figure out what the chase was. And long story short, it all led me to the Great Mother, and the deeper alchemical process.
Yeah,
That
man. That's awesome.
I'm and also just it's important to give credit due to the people that build that connection to the divine. That's not to say that people are just vessels for you to have a magical experience, not
No,
at
but
all.
they
But
definitely are a part of it, for sure.
yeah, they're absolutely a part of it. And so the siren, in between me and the deeper alchemical lessons I learned, was this recurring dream, because after a while I did start to get sucked back in, and I started thinking, like, if I'm having this dream, then I maybe, like, we're meant to be together, like, I don't know, maybe a soulmate thing.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
get that.
uh yeah, well, and I remained skeptical, but I really went for it, in terms of like trying to see what that meant for me internally. Like, it goes into the book a little bit. I tried my hand at getting her back. I but I learned, and you get into, like, I talk about Odysseus, and traveling through with the heat of Circe the witch, through the path of the sirens out at sea. And so I'll explain this a little bit, and this is essentially what I learned was the landscape of my dreams. It was not a soulmate thing. It was instead the metaphor that the sirens explained, where if you do not stuff your ears with beeswax and tie yourself to the mast, um you're going to jump overboard, in harmonious delusion, because of the songs of the siren, and you're going to swim to the island of the sirens, and you can see not only the bones of people that have died there, but starving men just listening to the song, just waiting for them to show some attention.
Hmm.
And some people can be like that. There's some manipulative people, but in my case, Ramona is a great person, still is.
Yeah, she
And I
wasn't the siren, but the energy of the siren was projected through the energy between you two onto you.
yeah, it there are different ways you could put it, but without mincing words, and you can get a lot more psychological. But without mincing words, I was having dream encounters with the entity, the archetypal entity of the siren, the song of the siren, this entity that whispers sweet nothings to you and says, just
Tells you
let go.
everything you want to hear. Yeah.
Everything you want to
Yep.
hear. Don't think about it too hard. If I had just kept following these dreams, I would have eventually, like I was not anywhere near this point, just to give myself credit, and Ramona will back this up. But seriously, eventually, in a big continuum, if I had let this build up, this would have gotten to stalker levels. Who knows? Like it very well could have theoretically. If I was a weaker person and I did not do this inner work and I had just stewed on it and been like, well, I keep having these dreams. What if we are meant to be together? Because this really tested my sanity. After a while, you start to feel like a part of yourself is locked away in this dream. Like,
Mm.
please let me stop fucking having this dream. I don't want this. I'm so over this. Um, I want nothing more than to be done with it, but I feel like, and so you oscillate between like, oh, I really we're meant to be together, and oh my God, whatever it is, just let it
Yeah,
be
and a
done.
part of you's probably, from what I gathered from the book, a part of you was saying if she just gives in and loves me like the way I need to be loved, you know what I'm saying? Like, then all of this shit will go away, right? Like, it's just something you got to conquer in a sense, right?
Yeah, no, I would never would have learned the lesson. And here's the thing: is if she had actually like agreed, to if we had not ended it sooner and just stayed in a dysfunctional relationship, like it would have been terrible. We wouldn't have learned anything. I mean, there would have been the ups and downs of any relationship, but the point being, I wouldn't have had the drive and the necessity to go to the lengths that I did. And by not following the dreams anymore, I started looking more into dream analysis and dream interpretation. I started getting much deeper into Jung. And by the end of it, without, it's hard to spoil something like this, but just for context,
You
I
can't
eventually,
spoil this book. There's no way.
no, there's just I feel confident saying it's very dense. But so there's a lot in there. But I realize that these dreams, Jung also talks about this, where recurring dreams, you have to look at them on a continuum. There's scenes in a movie that are, and there's a progression happening with each recurring dream. Or potentially there is no progression, but that is a very important note to make. Like that's a stark distinction to be
Do
made.
you realize,
And so,
bro, like I hate to cut you off, but you realize
no,
you
go ahead.
brought the dream world into reality almost physically. You realize that, right? That's what a magician does. And I'm not talking about like, oh, it was a coincidence I manifested, a job 2 months later. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it became a very magical thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I finally had to put, the initial cap, at least on this, like these experiences with Ramona, was what we talked about at the beginning, this encounter with the Great Mother through, ceremony and ritual and trance states, because I realized that these dreams were a continuum that I did not have an end for, and I needed to seek the ending of, because if I chose the current ending that I was looking for with this physical relationship with Ramona, it would not solve anything, and it would basically lead me to the proverbial, feet of the siren, starving to death.
Yeah, yeah, for
Because
sure. You'd have died.
Yeah,
Not like
sometimes,
physically, but dude, when you see a man on the street who's lost everything, and like they're just, when you meet a person who is who's lost, and you know what I'm talking about, right? That's a victim, right? If you talk, and I'm just telling you, if you get their whole story, a lot of people's like, oh, it's a Vietnam vet. No, a lot of times you would be surprised how much this energy can lead a person to a spiraling downward life.
oh yeah,
Oh,
big time. And I will say this as a cap on all that. I learned, among all the things we talked about, I learned, and I can never forget it, that these dreams, which were not nightmares, they were fairly
no, they were cool
pleasant.
dreams.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful woman involved. Like there's nothing on the face of it that's terrible about it. But the sometimes the things that seem um sometimes things are too good to be true, and sometimes the things that look the nicest are the most terrifying. The wolf in sheep's clothing, the predator giving the candy out of the van. Like these are old tropes, and
Yeah.
they also apply to spirituality. The
Yeah.
song of the siren.
So
Need I say more?
I had a dream midway through this past relationship that I was in, that when I read that, I remembered the dream, and I even opened up my journal and went back to it. Right. So, my dream was a house, and there was this pool of water that was going by this house, and there was a mermaid just laying there flopping like a fish, like flop, 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 in despair. Right. And this was a year and a half ago. But as soon as I started reading about that part in the book, like that dream, I went to my journal and opened it up. And see, there's more nuances to that dream. There was a line of women behind that mermaid, and there was an old lady whispering into their ears. And whenever she got done whispering in their ears, they would turn into a mermaid, into a siren.
Whoa.
Right. So it looked like a grandmother or a mother figure just sitting there going, like whispering to the mermaid. And then she would flop and turn into a siren. And immediately I would look at it and become emotional. Like, I need to save this thing, Right. And then I went into this house, and I met this being, bro, it looked like a Magneto, but a very giant Magneto with a golden head. And there was no earthly things. It was very metal, right? Very metallic, very solid, very rigid. And it was picking up furniture, like house items, and throwing them at me. And I'm like, what in the hell does this mean? That dream meant so much, dude. Like, I don't want to get into the depths of what I went through. I mean, I'd have to write about it like you did, but that dream revealed to me everything that pretty much happened. It happened that way, like it wasn't just trying to show me something. It was warning me about something, something that I'm thinking that and I don't understand this, but I'm thinking that my unconscious saw it. Like this realm of the collective unconscious, I think, lies underneath, and it knows. Right. And we move around as individuals, but if it spots something, it can tell you something. Each individual and these archetypes and these beings live inside this collective, and it can go through you and tell you something or not, or warn you, or give you some type of precognition thing, right? If it recognizes something that's happening. I think it really, really does that sometimes, man,
Absolutely.
And there was, dude, I mean, we don't have enough time to go through the synchronicities of everything that I experienced reading this book, dude. But I went on a ride through this book. And like, I feel like if you're a person that has struggled with feminine energy, man or woman, like if you're a guy that has struggled with understanding feminine or energy, your feminine energy especially, and like if you have troubles connecting with it, or if you're a woman and you have like some deep mother issues that you know about, or just anybody that wants to get in touch with the feminine, the divine feminine side of themselves, not like the girl. I'm not talking about the girl. I'm talking about the great mother, man. This is a book to get. It's a book to get because you don't have to do anything Anthony does. You could just go on the ride with him as he goes down through it. But I can almost bet that if you have struggled, like I'm saying, that something will happen. It will be a dream, or something is going to happen when you read this book that's going to unlock something in you. And I don't say that about a lot of books. And I'm not just saying that because you're my buddy. I'm a straight shooter, dude. Like, I'm not going to bullshit people. But what I do have a talent for is finding very, very underestimated talent. Very underestimated talent. And I pride myself in that. You know, that's a gift. And this is one of those cases where, you know, I found that in you just through interviews and podcasting and stuff, but didn't really know the depths of it until I really got into this book. So it's like you know, you had me on your show one time to talk about hermetics, right? And I felt so frustrated because I thought people just do not understand hermetic philosophy. And you understood it more than most at 20 years old, you know, than most people do. Like when I was talking about the 3 stages of the mysteries and all that stuff and the Hermetica, you already knew all that, dude. You knew it all, you know. I don't know why people should do this work. Like if you read this book and you don't have an eye-opening experience with the divine feminine, then I don't think really anything else is going to give you that experience. Like there's something that's cut off in you. That's just my opinion. You know, I hate to be harsh about it, but I find that it's very important, you know. It's really important.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I have, ever since this book has been released, I have struggled to pitch it to people because it doesn't fit a framework that anyone is familiar with. It's not just, you know, a spiritual how-to. It's got a little bit of fiction. It's got like some coming of age type shit in there. It's
It needs to be a
dark
film
at times.
Dude, I love, bro. Like I've watched Waking Life. You've seen that, right? Like Waking
a good
Life.
one, yeah.
Some films that really, I love those kind of films. This thing could be that for sure, dude. It could.
Well, filmmakers hit us up, man. We did with the cover of the book is a beautiful painting done by rapper and homie from New York City, Decca. He's got like smooth jazz raps that are just full of poetry and Jungian symbolism. Like this guy's really inspired by William Blake, and he's a great lyricist too. He's a dope rapper, makes his own beats, very talented artist in general. So yeah, who knows? Maybe we could get a little bit of him on the soundtrack one day. Filmmakers hit us up.
Yeah.
No, for real though, like I appreciate this because, you know, not to toot my own horn, but I know what's in the book, and I just call it like I see it. Like I've been slept on my whole life, and you know, I'm used to it. That's not why I do it. I do it for conversations like this. And I've made so many fucking friends, whether it be show hosts or listeners or other authors. This whole experience has enriched my life so much, and you know, like fuck it, you know, I've made some weed money, you know, off the books. Like I've made some money, but
Dude, this book is way more than money, man. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
This is kind of like when somebody comes out with
made very much money at all.
That first album, you know, and it's like, dude, that thing was so fucking badass, right? When you hear someone's first album, right? Like I'm gonna read Hunt Manual, and I'm pretty sure that, you know, glancing at it's gonna be just as good, but there has to be something that's very sentimental with you about this book, you know, being your first and as young as you were, you know, like. Everybody's been talking to me like, you should write something, and you're the only one that's ever convinced me to do it, to write.
Well, you know, like I said, man, even if no one else reads it, it's ceremony and ritual, and you will. I can truly say that I would have never, with anything else that I could have possibly done, any art form or any therapy, I could have never gotten the vantage point on my experiences that I got without writing a book. There is something about writing a book specifically, other than anything else. You have to systematize your experiences and your thoughts. You have to formulate it. You have to not only have it make sense to you, but make sure it translates and makes sense to other people. And if you make a book that is halfway decent, by the end of it, you will know that story. You will know the contents of that book so intimately that you might not ever want to read it again. So, if nothing else, you are guaranteed to have a radically different perspective of what you are writing about by the end of it. You're guaranteed.
Well, I can tell you that every wound that I had, that like there were many times that I stopped because I couldn't, like, if I would have left that on the narrative, like, you would hear my voice shaking, you know, because all of these, like, all of these things were going through my head, like, you know, not just the divine feminine, but the things that it brings, like things that I didn't have, that me growing up, that mean so much to me. And why do they mean so much to me? Things that, like, little bitty things like Christmases and stuff like that I just didn't have, and a nice, you know, nice homes and comfort, and the feminine kind of comfort that I'm trying to explain that comes from the Divine Mother. You realize what, like, there's a period of time that you go through beating yourself up because you feel weak for chasing it so hard, but you have to have some sympathy for yourself too, as to why you were doing that to begin with, you know, like all kinds of things got unlocked for me here, you know? So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad it helped, man. That's the whole reason I wrote it is, you know, people say like, hey, oh, if I could just help one person, then it'd be worth it. And that's true. You hope that it helps more than just one, but like it really, if I, let me put it like this, like if people gave me a helping hand at a time where if they hadn't, I wouldn't have made it. And again, and some of that is in mundane physical ways, like just mundane in the physical sense, because it obviously meant a lot. But in many cases, that was someone giving me spiritual advice, pointing me in the right direction. I never had outright leader, a mentor, but I had many people that were wiser than me that I sought counsel with throughout the years. Shout out to Bald Monk.
Bald Monk, I was going to say that's one of them.
Yeah. Bald Monk's a black. Alex is another one. Yeah. Shout out to Alex. Bald Monk is a dude that is very close to my heart. Yeah. I still keep in touch with him very regularly. But it's returning the favor, man. That's really what it is. Because like I said, if I hadn't had people just, you know, there but for the grace of God go I, you know, the chaos theory, the butterfly effect of it all. If I had just not had certain people in my life at certain times, well, you know, I might not be here. And those people mean everything to me, you know, and what they showed me means everything to me as well. And if I can just if I could just flap my wings and help someone keep going, not because even I inspired them or like I gave them some insight to keep going, but like just some relatability, if anything else. Like if you can just find something in my story and my experiences that can help you light a fire, then that's the whole reason I do this.
Bro,
you know, I'm still trying to figure out my career, man. So
yeah,
like,
that's all right. Like,
not in this for the money, that's for sure.
To me, the most fascinating thing to be around to me in life is people that can open up and be vulnerable with you, and not just vulnerable, but brave. Like, there's some true masculine strength, what I'd consider to be true masculinity in writing this book, right? Like, I don't think it was totally just about the anima here, because writing this book, you know, it's easy to act like a hard ass and keep everything in, dude. It's easy to do. That's so freaking easy to do. But like we inhale and we exhale, we eat and we poo, we drink and we pee. So when we take in these experiences, if we don't express them, then we're doing us and everybody a disservice. And that's with anything, that's all the way down to your health. And I don't think people understand this. And this is at the core nature of psychology to begin with. Like, you have to let this shit out, dude. And I've read a ton of books, but there's only been a few that have actually affected my life, to be honest with you, and this is one of them.
Well, thank you, man. I don't know if if my ego can take any more praise in this conversation.
You don't feel comfortable with it, huh?
I'm half joking. I really appreciate it. You're very kind.
That's true, man. I'm not just saying that. Like, it's true. You need to learn to feel comfortable with it, man, because if you help somebody, all you can do is say you're welcome, That's it.
Yeah, well, you're welcome, sir.
Just like when somebody helps you, all you can do is say, thank you, right? Like, that's
amen.
But it's I'm ready to get into the hunt manual for sure, man.
Oh man, I can't wait. Yeah, we're gonna definitely, listeners, stick around, because of sooner rather than later, Hunt Manual will have an audiobook, and we will have another companion conversation about that book.
Yeah.
So I'm psyched on that. That one's a lot darker in like the overt horror sense. Like, you're going to the Evil Dead cabin in the woods of your mind and learning to hunt the demons of your psyche. So
it's the little masculine side there, huh? Right. Yeah. I dig it.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's anything else I really got. We really touched on a lot. But hey, if anyone, check out the book, and like, if you liked it, rate and review it. I try not to harp that stuff too much, but I don't, like, I'm just trying to get myself out there as far as I can. I don't know where it's all going to go in the long run.
No, dude, just leave a good rating if you can.
Yeah, like that shit helps, If you go check out Black Hoodie Alchemy, and if you like it, leave a review, because it helps. Word of mouth is kind of the only thing that anybody has to go on with this kind of shit, because it's all DIY, it's all underground. We're holding it down for the underground here. That is something I can guarantee. So help us, help us out. Help me flap my wings, my little butterfly wings, get some chaos theory action up in here. But thank you very much, Joe, for this conversation and for reading the book, man. It's there's a lot of content out there, and sometimes it feels like you're just screaming into the void, especially with writing, because writing is such a long form thing, and people don't like their delayed gratification, and it can be tough to even just get people to read sometimes. So yeah, you're a blessing, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, man. No problem. I love doing audio. And yeah, so if you guys are listening on my end or watching this on this end, I'll leave a link to the book, and then as soon as the audiobook is published, there'll be a link there for that too, so you guys can get it.
Yeah, and if you're listening on my end, I will have everything in the show description, so check that shit out. And yeah, I guess that's it for now. I usually wrap up my show saying smoke weed and God bless, so I hope y'all do that. And if you don't smoke weed, just do your equivalent, just enjoy and God bless.
So there you go, smoke weed and God bless. So that was a really profound book for me, and I'll be doing the Hunt Manual too after that. There's a lot of things that I didn't get to talk about in this interview that I went through in the book. So there's kind of like a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas vibe to this book in a sense. Well, this is why I think it should be like a short film, because it takes you through a very animated process. So reading this book, like getting into narrating audiobooks, I never thought that any of these things was going to happen. because it's a lot of work, right? It's a big process to do all that, especially if you're reading them, editing them, and producing them, and then we're still trying to get Dive Manual to be updated properly so that it'll be out on Audible through the ACX. But I can say if you're doing any type of shadow work and you're into, let me just go through the subject matters here, okay? Psychology, magic, 4T and stuff, the psychedelics, the paranormal, metaphysics, archetypes, mythology, all of this stuff is in this book. Every bit of it. There was even a time when I'd lost my mind a little bit because I'd been up for like 2 days reading this book. No drugs, no weed, no anything. I have a clip of it here, like a blooper. I made a little blooper reel part of it where I don't know if you ever get the giggles, but if something funny happens and you just can't like make it through it. Let me see if I can find it. Once we make it to the sunlight, they'll start to retreat. And any stubborn motherfuckers won't be able to survive and any stubborn motherfuckers won't be able to. So when I'm clapping, I'm trying to edit the audio. Like when I'm clapping, I have to, what that does is it shows a spike in the audio so you can go back and edit it out. So every time I screw up, I have to clap, it's kind of painstaking. But anyways, here, listen to this. This is just like one of the things that happened to me. Here we go. Once we make it to the sunlight, they'll start to retreat. And any stubborn motherfuckers won't be able to survive and any stubborn motherfuckers won't be able to I can't even fucking say it. And any stubborn motherfuckers won't be able to survive above water anyway. Holy shit, Anthony. The fuck were you thinking when you wrote this shit? Don't worry. Once we I can't stop laughing. I can't tell if I'm delusional going through this shit with you, bro, or like, what the fuck? All right, let me try this again. Don't worry. I can't do it, dude. I can't fucking do it. Oh. We're in Anthony Tyler's mind, y'all. Okay, here we go. Don't worry. I can't. I know I'm going to fucking laugh, dude. I'm going to have to take a break. Sorry. Okay. Don't worry. Once we make it to the... I can't fucking believe this shit, dude. This guy is fucking symbolizing the transcendence coming back up for fucking light. And there's always stubborn fucking negative shit trying to keep you there. Okay, here we go. Don't worry. Once we make it to the sunlight, they'll start to retreat. And I've been lost in Anthony's fucking mind for like the last week. Don't worry. Once we make it to the sunlight, they'll start to retreat. And any stubborn motherfuckers won't be able to survive above water anyway.
Hi, this is Janet, and I'm trying to donate for the toys on the kickstand site, and I'm having some problems. I'm having a little bit of a problem. No, I'm so sorry. 2 Adderall, Jan. One isn't going to do anything. 2, please. Yeah, chop that one up and give me the other one. Okay, so I'm on the website and I'm trying to donate, and I'm a little flustered because I love this channel. I love the Paranoid Guy and the Donor Nut Guy. Like, this is wonderful. If you can, just kind of, I'm watching, so tell me how to do it. Tell me how to donate towards the toys. And I'm recently on the market. Well, he doesn't know that I'm looking for somebody. But so if you can, please just text me back. All 3 of you, if you like, it's America, right? 3 text with your social credit scores, your net worth, and a picture of that big old pickup truck that you have. I am so excited. Could you please help me figure out this kickstand thing, and I will donate towards whatever you guys need, whatever you need. Thank you. Yeah, just maybe one more Adderall. Thank you.
See you guys tomorrow night. Same time, same channel.